Eh bien, le bonsoir à tous, bien le bonsoir à tous nos amis internautes. C'est encore le jeudi soir en direct avec Pasteur Sarah Batroni, côté nous connaît que nous venons pour nous informer, nous, pour nous éduquer et pour nous rappeler nous tout. Thursday Night Live comes to you every Thursday to inform, to educate, to remind you, because a lot of times we know that you may know the information, but at times we forget. So that's why we come live in your home, because also we believe that it's not just the spiritual part that is important, although it is the most important part of who we are, of what we do, but the physical aspect is also important. So that's why we come to you live every Thursday night to make a difference in all aspects of your life, which is the social physical part. All right. So we welcome you, those of you on YouTube, those of you on Facebook. Welcome to Thursday Night Live. And before I start, I would like to ask you to share this broadcast because this is a very important topic that we're going to be covering tonight. It's regarding speech and language development in children, in young ones. So, nous connaissons que ça sont un bagage qui est très important. Lorsqu'on bébé, lorsqu'on timoun, après que vous finissez un timoun, et langage, parole, son que la pral énoncer, parole que tu vas énoncer, comment le langage il va le développer, très important, et tout ça, tendez autour. Okay, the hearing is all part of it. So we believe it's important. So before we even present our guest tonight, I would like you to start sharing on Facebook. I would like you to also take a minute to go on YouTube, Sarah Batroni, and subscribe if you have not yet done so. So, abonné à Sarah Batroni à YouTube. Pour un moment, pendant que je vais présenter guest là, pour un moment, allez sur YouTube et abonnez à Sarah Batroni. Merci beaucoup. Donc, à Soya, we have a wonderful young woman, a professional. Elle est haïtienne, mais elle ne parle pas beaucoup créole. Il ne parle pas de créole en pile, so m'a dégagé avec lui. Le dit bagay yo m'a traduit pour nous, même quoi que l'important pour nous tendre toute information que le bral porter pour nous à Soya. All right, so her name is Daphne Douarin. Daphne Douarin is a speech language pathologist. She's been a speech language pathologist for 15 years, and she's working in a New York City elementary school. She is also providing home-based services to children from birth to 3 years old in early intervention. Daphne Douarin has her Master's of Science in Speech Language Pathology and Certificate in Clinical Competency. So right now, I'm going to introduce her to you and welcome. Bienvenue parmi nous. Je vais faire parler un petit créole, Daphné. Je vais introduire tout à l'audience là. On va dire exactement ça me dit là. Et en plus, on dit un petit bagage que je ne pas dit tout dans la bio, pas vrai? Fait un petit peu plus. So,
okay. Bonsoir, tout le monde. Merci pour venir là. Non, moi c'est Daphne Douarin. Et puis, I'm in speech language pathology. I don't know how to say that in Creole, but moi, bien content pour la aujourd'hui pour nous parler avec vous, avec de Timunio, avec langage développement. I have been a speech language pathologist or speech therapist for 15 years, and I am married, and I have a dog, and her name is Coco, and I don't have any kids, but I come from a very big family. There's 5 of us, and 4 out of the 5 of us are in the healthcare professional. 2 of my sisters are nurses, and one of my brothers is a respiratory therapist, and my other brother's in real estate. My parents are, live not too far from me, so we're a little scattered because some of us are in Florida, Virginia, different places, but I enjoy what I do. I love working with kids, even though I don't have any of my own. I have a big family. I have 13 nieces and nephews, and it's just a big family. So I enjoy working with kids. And it's interesting how I got into the profession because I actually was pre-med in college. I was going to be a doctor. I was going to be a pediatrician or an OBGYN. And then it just, I got into my junior year of college, and then it just got to be a little too much. So then it was, 50, almost 20 years ago. And I didn't know speech was something new. And I went to speak to the counselor, and she was like, oh, there's this, new profession that not too many people know of. And it's called speech language pathology. And I did some research, and then I kind of just fell in, and I never looked back. So I am passionate about it. I enjoy talking about it. I am looking forward to sharing my experiences and answering any of your questions to the best of my ability tonight. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Daphne. So let's get right into the heart of the topic. What is language development? Is there a difference between speech and language development?
Yeah, so I'm a speech language pathologist. So the speech part is the actual sounds that we make. So children, when babies come out, they don't come out just, talking, obviously. They start, babbling and cooing, but making sounds. So, uh-oh, and, gurgling and stuff like that. Their first word might be mama, dada. So the speech part is the ability of the child to pronounce the sound. So some kids in my practice have trouble making the S sound. So, if they want to say, I want ice cream, it might sound like I want ice cream, something like that. Or I want to go on the slide. It sounds like I want to go on the slide. That's speech. It doesn't mean that there is something wrong cognitively. They could speak, but it's hard for people to understand them. And it's hard for people to understand them because they have difficulty making those sounds. Language development is speaking, engaging in conversation, but it's also understanding conversation. So with language, there's a couple of parts, but the main parts, especially for little ones, is receptive and expressive language. Receptive language is how much you understand. So if you say, give me your shoe, or go put your toy away, if the child's able to do that, that means that they understand language. Expressive language is them speaking using words. And I just want to say that speech and language therapy is all type of communication. Not every child talks. Some children communicate by what we call an AAC device, an augmentative adaptive communication device. So it could be a book, it could be an iPad where they have to press the buttons, and that's how they communicate. Some children point, to communicate. They point in a communication book. So my job as a speech language pathologist is to give people a mode of communication to express themselves. And of course, everyone wants it to be verbal, but it's not always verbal. But back to what I was saying, expressive language is expressing themselves, being able to ask for things and making their wants and needs met. So there is a difference. There is children that have difficulty with both, and there's children that have difficulty with just one end. So there is definitely a difference.
Okay, great. Thanks for establishing that difference. So speech is a matter of sound.
Yes, individual.
Mm-hmm. Right. So a child may have problems. So ti moun nan gen doit gen problem pour son sorti bien. S'il veut dire son, li gen sorti fan. So ça son problème de son li gen. OK? Mais langage là lui-même, language is communication. Mm-hmm. Is sharing, is understanding, is holding up a conversation. So langage là lui-même, c'est pour ti moun nan capable comprendre et puis pour exprimer l'en retour. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So
And
in
then
other,
the speech part is usually I'll see children with the speech part. If, teachers or parents or something will say, I can't understand anything they're saying. They're talking to me, but I don't understand what they're saying. That's
yes,
the sounds that they have difficulty with.
right. So that's a sound, but they can communicate. They don't
They
have a
can
language.
communicate.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow. That's interesting. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
And it could
So
coincide. You could have a child that has language issues and it's hard to understand them, or you could just have a child that just has the speech issues.
okay. So you mentioned that about sound. So how important or how early do children start making sound? We see little babies. I was looking for little babies on the internet, like, but minority babies, but I couldn't find. I thought it was important to have those. So this is my own little baby, 13 years ago. So that means those babies, they can start making sounds very early.
Yep.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And even from birth, their crying is a sound. Like they're making that sound to communicate that they have a need or they have a want that they want to be met. But if you're talking more like they'll start, or even 3 months they'll start, if you start, oh, look at the baby changing your diaper, and they start, goo goo gaga, babbling. That starts at
Uh-huh.
like 3 months, and 6 months they start, 6 months they start to have some sounds, like they start to be able to make like the p sound, p, b, at 6 months they're already doing that. And also at 6 months they start engaging more and turn taking with you, meaning like if you start vocalizing with them, they respond in their little jargon gibberish.
Okay, so a little baby like this one, this is a newborn. That
Hmm.
means when that baby makes a sound, that baby in actuality, is he communicating,
Yeah,
or what exactly is he communicating? Even when, if he's, let's say he's crying for the bottle, that's a sound.
that's a
Yes.
sound. That's a sound, and
Okay.
that's a form of communication. That's the sound that he has. Obviously, we don't expect him to say, "Give me a bottle." So what he can do is he can cry. So
Right.
that's how he knows how to make his needs met. And
Uh,
then as the children, as the babies get older and mothers get to know their babies, and that's why the back and forth vocalization is so important, because then you start to notice and understand what different sounds mean. So if the baby's wet, it's not the same cry as if they're hungry, you
mhm.
know so that's how they start to do it.
I mean, there would be both upset cries, but it would be different.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I get you. I get you. So, in terms of continuing development,
Hmm.
now, a baby that age, I believe he was 9 months, 6 to 9 months old
Hmm.
there. That means the parent should be already looking for which type of sounds.
So already the child is going to be saying, the p, the b, the stuff like that. Those PBMs. He's gonna understand no. If you say no between 6 to 9 months, 9 months, the baby is gonna understand. When you at 9 months, they can respond to their name, and they'll
Mhm,
turn to different sounds. That's like the receptive part. If
mhm,
you have a toy that makes a sound and you have another toy that makes another sound, they start to realize that these toys are making sounds.
mhm,
So they start to get it. um, what else? They can, around 9 months, they're pointing. They'll start to point to things, to what they want. So definitely 6 to 9 months, they're becoming little people. you
right.
know and
Like
they're trying
small
to,
version people.
yeah, but they're trying to, they'll reach up for you to hold it, for you to pick them up. They're trying to become a part of your conversation in your life.
So this baby here at this age, he would be much aware of the sounds that the mother, the father, or everybody
Mhm.
else, or somebody is used to, is making, and he would start actually mimicking those sounds.
Yep.
It would
Yep.
be speech, but not language yet. Is that
Right.
right?
It's not true words, so it would be babbling. So
Uh-huh.
6 to 9 months, 9 months, they're doing more babbling. You don't understand what they're saying, but you know that they're communicating in their own way. Or even if he's in his crib and he's not sleeping, but you hear sounds like he's just, like talking, but you don't
Mhm.
understand. It's babbling, definitely at 9 months.
Okay. So question for you. All babies will be babbling and would be cooing, right? Tout bébé
Yes.
a fait ah.
Yes.
So then
Mhm.
you will never know if that baby has a language problem until much later.
Right.
All
So
babies with
yeah.
sound.
So at that age, if they're quiet, si ti moun nan pa di rien, pa fe rien, ou konen gen problem. But if we're talking words, that'll come later. Like 12 months is when they usually have their first word. 18 months, they'll have about 20 words, like true words. But even if the child, you know, moms know their babies, so they can tell if something's wrong, like even if they don't have the words, are they participating in the communication? If you go to the baby and start singing, do they reciprocate, or stuff like that? You won't know if they're delayed in language, but you can kind of say, oh, they're quiet. If I don't look over there and look at their face or see
Yeah.
something, I'm not going to know that something's wrong. you
Mhm.
know and there is the babies that are just quiet and shy, eh, bon ti mounyo, eh, we love them, but you can tell that they're too quiet.
Right, right. So we have a question. Michelle is asking, being speech is focused on sound, why do most therapies offered for children with speech delay refer to, let me put it on screen for you so
Okay.
you can see.
Oh, it went away. Okay.
Okay.
Speech focus. Why do most therapies speech refer to speech therapy, even though the child does speak, only have limited words? Well, it's speech and language therapy. It's together. That's when you have to do the evaluation.
Mhm.
If you are concerned about your child, usually up until 3, we're not looking at the speech sounds. We're looking for communication, for language. So I wouldn't really, if I have a 2-year-old, I'm not looking to see how clear. I mean, I'm thinking that they should be clear, but they
Mhm.
wouldn't get service. They wouldn't get services just for that. It would be more because they're not expressing themselves, that they don't have enough language.
It would be language, not
It would be
really
more
speech.
language based. Yes. As they get older, then it's more speech,
Mhm.
but there is, and when they're young, I need them to talk. I need them to have more language.
Right.
Because
To
then I don't know
understand.
if they don't have enough language. I don't know if they have a speech sound. I don't find out till later, when they get more language, if they have a speech problem, like a sound problem.
Okay. So Michelle was asking, are these therapies addressing the right types of issues, the right types of problems? So what you're saying is, yes, they are.
Yeah, there's an evaluation. Like, I can't just come to you and say, your child is really quiet. I think they need speech and language therapy. There's a whole process. There's testing that's done, and then
Mhm.
the testing will show what specific areas that the child needs. So it's not, in the school system, when the parents hear, oh, they're going to get speech therapy, they're like, my child knows how to talk. They know how to say all the sound. They forget
Mhm.
about the language part.
Mhm.
Okay, but your child is not able to answer questions. Your child is not speaking in complete sentences. But with
Mhm.
the itty bitties, the mom's like, oh, my child, talks. They don't have a sound, they have their sound. It's opposite. So in terms, I would be able to, just from experience, say, I think you might want to do a speech and language
Mhm.
evaluation, but until you get the testing, that's when you get the data to know exactly where there's the problem.
Got you, got you. So you just mentioned something that I'm gonna write on that. I'm gonna take that and run with it if you don't mind.
Sure.
Let's say they're saying to the parent that the child can't answer question, or your child can speak. How, or doesn't understand, or the language spoken to them. What's the role? What if a child is being spoken to or communicated to in two different languages? OK? Bien que nous haïtiens, nous parlons avec ti moun nan, gen moun qui parle avec eux en français, gen qui parle en
Mhm.
anglais, gen qui parle en créole. All
Yep.
these, or even if you're not addressing the child, since the hearing, the speech, or the language is connected to hearing,
Mhm.
that child from a little baby,
They're
he's
exposed to it.
hearing,
Yeah.
right, he's hearing Creole, he's hearing French, he's hearing English. So what's the role of being bilingual or trilingual?
It
How does that affect the development of the language of the child?
It's a positive effect. Children, research shows that children are able, about 8 years old, they're able to pick up different languages very quickly. After 8, it takes a little longer. That's why if you and I as adults want to learn a different language, we have to like get Rosetta Stone and it takes us a long time. But
Right.
children are, their brains are malleable and very, very resilient. So they are able, trilingual, quadrilingual, bilingualism. I am all for it. I never tell the parents to, just speak English to them. The only thing I tell is that you have to make sure you're consistent. So if, you're a bilingual parent and you have a family and then, they know, oh, the child knows that, oh, okay, this is a cup.
Mm-hmm.
So in English, it's a cup. They need to know that in Creole, this is gode.
Uh-huh.
So if I say,
You
"Ang
go,
pon gode," if I say, "Ang pon gode, go get the cup," they need to be able to know both of those things for them to understand it. A child that has trouble bilingualism, like some kids will come into the school system and the teachers will be like, oh, they have a second language, I think they have an issue. It's not an issue, it's a language difference. Because there's different sounds in English that other, maybe Chinese doesn't use it or Spanish doesn't use it. It doesn't mean that there's a problem, it just means that there's a language difference. But there are children that are bilingual that have a language disorder. And the way we know that is they have difficulties in both languages. So if they speak another language, their evaluation, like if it's a Spanish, their evaluation will be in Spanish. And if the evaluator is doing the evaluation and there's difficulties in Spanish, then it's a language disorder. Then they have a difficulty. So it's a positive. Keep talking to your children in your bite. It's amazing. It's an amazing thing to have. And it's not going to negatively impact their language development.
Okay, got you. So we know that children do a lot of playing.
Yes.
How important are toys? Playing with different toys or specific toys. How important is that in language development?
So it's not the toy specifically, because we know the kids could have a box and they play with the box, right? You go to the store, moms say, I bought them all these toys, and they want to play with the box of the toys, right?
Yeah,
so it's
right.
not specifically the toy, it's knowing how to play. It's called pretend play. So children need to know how to play because that is the imitation of real life. So the girl, the little girl that has the doll that's feeding the doll sees her mom feeding her and will grow up and, go to school and, know that, oh, that's what you do with a baby. You feed them, you wash them, you do that stuff. It's important socially for them so that they can interact with other children. And it's all, when they get to school, they'll say, okay, you be the baby and I'll be the mommy, and I'm going to feed you. They're imitating real life situations. It's also important for them in terms of knowing how to play. It's play therapy. Up until, 3 years old, my therapy is play therapy. So we're playing. They need to know how to play with the ball, play catch with the ball, because that means that it's turn taking. You get a turn, I get a turn. You get a turn, I get a turn. That helps with following directions. That helps with patience, interacting with other people. So pretend play is very important. If I go and I see a child and I take a ball and they don't know what to do with it, or they walk away, that's where we're starting. Or if I give them a box of blocks and they just look at it They should be able to stack it. They should be wanting to take that box, throw it over, and then put the blocks back in. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very pretend play is very important, and it's very important to interact with your children and talk about it. So if you're feeding the baby, oh, let's feed the baby, eat, 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 then they'll start to imitate it and they will start to say it, and that'll help their language also.
Are you talking about an older sibling or the baby? Like this baby, I'm feeding the baby and I'm saying, oh, I'm going to be feeding you and this is food time or this is changing time. Or are you talking about the older siblings or the actual baby?
Both. If you
Okay.
have your baby and you're changing your diaper, changing the diaper, you're talk about your routines. Like that's the number one thing I would probably say to parents. Talk to your child about what you're doing. Okay, it's time to your diaper needs to be changed. What are we doing? We're changing the diaper. Oh, you have a poopy diaper. Yuck, ooh. And put it in the drawer. It's time to eat. What are we gonna eat? Oh, it's so good. Because then they'll start to realize, oh, it's the next time, or maybe as they get older, you'll be like, oh, it's a poopy diaper. And they'll say, ooh, poopy diaper. Like they'll start saying it.
Okay.
And then for the older children, it's important so that they can do it themselves also. So talking to your child throughout every routine.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what should I do if my child's speech or language appears to be delayed?
Well, the first thing to do is to talk to your pediatrician. But that gets tricky because a lot of them, they're better now. A lot of the pediatricians are better now, but a lot of them will say, oh, don't worry, give it time, don't worry. And the problem with that is that if you wait, there's like a window, right? So the younger that you get it, that's why they call it early intervention.
Mm-hmm.
The younger you get it, the less time they may have to continue to get the services.
Okay.
So I would say definitely talk to your pediatrician, because then you may have to get like a referral for your insurance or those logistics and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you really feel like deep down, like I said, moms, your babies, if you really
Right.
feel no, something's wrong, then you can call the Department of Health, or you can call your local school district, and you can tell them, I have a 2-year-old, I have a 3-year-old, or whatever. I'm concerned, I want to get a speech and language evaluation.
You can call the local school district even though the child is not going to school yet.
Yeah, you can call the local school district, because if your child is after 3, birth to 3 is early intervention, so that's in the home, right? 3 to 5 is preschool, and that's where the school district does it. So either you would call the Department of Health, or you would call your school district. And even if your child is 2, the school district, they know, they can help to guide you. Every state is different, so you would have to get that information. But Department of Health would be the first place I would go. And you can even go on a Department of Health and put language milestones, and it'll give you a breakdown every month, every age, what the child should be doing. They'll have pictures, they'll have video, and you can kind of like a checklist, and you can see what the child, where your child falls.
Okay. Is it okay and possible to rush the language process of a child? Is it
No.
okay?
No. Rushing, there's no rushing. The children that don't have any kind of, difficulties will, go. Every child will learn at their pace, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a child and I've been working on with them, and, I'm like, oh, they're really not making progress, it could be because there's something else, maybe they have something more than just the language. So, or maybe they didn't have any exposure, and I'm starting at the very, very, very beginning. Or
Mm-hmm.
I have children that are just not talking. They're able to play, they're able to follow directions, and then within a year, they're golden. And I'm like, great. So every child is different.
Okay, so the child will pick up the language normally, naturally. It's not something that you have to rush.
No,
Like,
you just have to talk to your child. Yeah, it's nothing that you rush, unless there's some kind of a disorder or something like that. But a typically developing child will just naturally progress with it. I mean, obviously you can, expose them to more, and have them, read the encyclopedia to them and, like, it's what you expose your child to, the one who reads the encyclopedia to their child is going to, or, takes them to the museum every weekend is going to have more of a rich vocabulary than the child that is just, reading regular books. Nothing is wrong. They're both fine. It's just one has more experience than the other, but there's
Right.
no delay.
Right. Now, why is it that when the child has difficulty in language development, it affects their overall behavior? They become, it's like when the child is playing with their toy, it's either like, let's say they can't put it together or they broke it, they can't put it back together. They get very nervous and, why is that?
It's the frustration. It's the frustration. So their communication is the way they get their needs met and want.
Mm-hmm.
To get their needs met. So they're conveying their wants and needs by their communication. So
Mm-hmm.
if they're playing with a toy and it breaks and they don't have the words to say, "Mom," or "Help," or "It's broken," they're gonna
Mm-hmm.
take it out on the toy. They're gonna throw the toy. They're gonna hit the toy, whatever. So they just don't have a way for them to communicate. It's the same way with the kids that have behavior. Some of them, it's out of frustration. It's very different than a temper tantrum where they're not getting what they want. But if they don't have the words to say, "Oh, I'm hungry, I don't want to play with this," or whatever, then they may hit, they may bite, whatever or they may just cry, whatever is their mode of releasing their frustration. So it really comes down to that language. And, the one of the first things I teach the kids is more, right? So I'm like, more, and I'll teach them to sign more and gestures and everything like that. And once they realize that more is what they need to say in order to get something, they're just like, more, more. And, a lot of the behaviors will go away.
So really, there is nothing wrong in terms of behavioral patterns, but it's the language that is affecting their behavior, making them frustrated. Therefore, they have to act it out. Is that
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Right. And listen, obviously we have to talk about the whole child, right? So we got to
Mm-hmm.
talk about their home life. We got to talk about what, their day-to-day is. We got to talk about whatever it is. But if we're just talking about the language, the majority of the time, it is that they are frustrated because they can't communicate.
Okay. Okay. So it's not something that is more. C'est pas un bagay qui plus que ça le paraît là. C'est parce que le langage là, si mon est frustré puis l'a acté in a certain way, aggressive,
Right.
pas qu'à exprimer en réalité ça le veut dire. Which
Yeah.
would be normal parce que même si nous-mêmes like us, if you know you want to say something and you can't express it, you do get frustrated. You're like, man,
Right.
I know what I want to say, but I can't express it. Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. And we're also talking about, and look, this is, the children that we ruled out everything. So we ruled out autism, we ruled out, sensory, we ruled out a hearing loss, stuff like that. I'm talking about just regular kids. If you're like, what is wrong? And they're just screaming and crying, then it could just be that they just don't have the words.
Mhm. So what do you do in that sense for the child?
Well, we have to give them the words. We have to give them something, right? So we may not give them the words. I would always start with a gesture, A lot of kids that I see may not even point. So it's like, what's wrong? Teach them to just point to something. Or, I'll pair sign language. Do you want more? And in the beginning, they don't have to say anything because I just need them to communicate. But if they're hungry or they're like want more food and they're like frustrated. I'm like, oh, mom, just do more. Once they do that, okay, give it to them, and then you work up from there. So we always start with like gestures. Me, if they want a turn for something, ball or something like that. So gestures and sign language, and it's always paired with the word. And the more they get it,
Mm-hmm.
I phase out the gesture so that they just have the word.
Okay. Okay. Then you win them off. You win them off. Okay. You win them
Because
off.
a lot of times, some of them will just stay. They'll just say, they'll just do this, and we're like, no, we got to get them to continue and do it. And
And
listen, if they're nonverbal and they just have the sign, that's okay. But a lot of times they can talk. They're
mhm,
able to. I push them to. I push them as much as I can, and whatever I get is where I am. I meet the child
mhm.
where they are.
Okay. All right. There's another question. What do you do when speech therapy is not helping the child? What are some alternatives?
Well, that's a little tricky because I gotta know the child. Like, why is speech therapy not helping? Is speech therapy not helping because there's no carryover at home? Speech is only an hour a week, so when I go into the homes or even when I'm in the school, I'm helping them, I'm teaching them, I'm giving them the strategies, but, at home, it has to be carried over.
Do you
Or,
also teach the parents? Do
yes.
the parents come to those sessions as well?
Mhm. Yeah, in the home, and it depends on the parents. I have some parents that are so involved, they're right there, they're doing it. I have some parents, most of my parents, it's just best that they're not in the room because the children are just distracted or and then afterwards I'll talk to the parents and tell them what I did and I'll show them and tell them what to do. Kind of like give them a little homework, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But they have to be involved because when I'm not there, they're with their kid.
And also, I would think that with some parents, when the just like ou kon wè lè ti moun nan pou kont li avek ou, the child is fine. But
Yes.
as soon as the mom or the dad is there,
Yes.
the child starting to acting up like you are killing them or doing something bad to them. So
Yeah.
I can see how, in some instances, the presence of the parent might not help instead of helping.
Yeah.
Simply
So
because
now
the
just
child will not
yeah,
respond as well to you as they would without their parents, right?
exactly. And that definitely always happens because it'll be like, children are smart. They know you're my mom. I'm going to cry. I'm going to do
Yes.
everything. Eventually, you're going to give me what I want. I
Mm-hmm.
come in, they don't know me. They have no idea who I am. They don't know that I can let them cry and I'll leave and they don't get what they want. So a lot of times they will work more,
You mean
better.
to tell me you do that to those kids?
I do. I push them. I'm like, they have to cry it out a little bit. They have to learn that they can't just cry to get what they want because then they're never going to talk. I mean, I wish all I had to do was cry and I would get all my needs met. Why would you talk? So you
Mm-hmm.
have to push them a little bit. I tell parents, push and model for like 3 seconds or 3 turns and then let them go. I don't let the parents get frustrated or let the kid get frustrated because then the child will associate the parent with just that bad experience. And I don't want that. Me, I can come and go. And the next time I come, they're gonna forget that they had a bad
Right.
experience. I have my toys, so I know what to do. But
Mhm.
I tell parents, push a little bit, but not too much.
Right. Right. So you don't make them feel like, yeah, okay, the negativity is coming from it, and then that will prevent them even
Yep.
more from from speaking. And you
Yep.
mentioned something about hearing, if there is no hearing problem. I'm reminded of a story that I heard from a lady way that was a few years back. She said that she was maybe 3 or 4, and she was deaf. Her mom never picked up on it that the
Oh.
child was actually deaf. She said she was in the living room with her auntie, and the mom was in the kitchen, and something happened. A pile of dishes just crashed on the floor. She was watching TV with the auntie in the living room, close enough to get startled. So the dishes crashed on the floor, and the auntie was sitting there, and she jumped, and she noticed that the child did not bat an eye, and she just kept staring very peacefully, watching the TV screen. So the aunt at that point pointed out to the mother, she said, "This is weird. This big noise just happened enough to make her jump and come and hold on to me and cry. The child did not do anything." So it's only at that point when the auntie pointed it out to the mom, they started making sound to see if she could hear,
They
and
can
sure
connect.
enough, she could not hear a thing, which would have explained why her language also was delayed,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So is it at times because of a hearing problem that children get older and they don't speak? In our community, na culture or in our culture, sometimes children are 6 years old, they don't speak, and then boom, they start speaking on their own.
Hmm.
I mean, how do you explain that? They're
Yeah.
5, 6, 7 years old, they don't speak.
Yeah, so there's two parts. There's the something called late talkers. So there is a thing where kids just, yeah, I've heard those stories. It's just 4 years old and the kid is not talking, there's nothing wrong, and they're just behind, they're just lagging. So they would
Mhm.
definitely get therapy, and therapy would be the same. And then when it, practice, 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 and when it comes, it comes. A lot of times those children also have a family history of language disorders, so that's, the parents say, oh, my brother got speech, or oh, my, I had it, or whatever. The hearing loss can be from even one, two. If a child has a lot of ear infections, then there is a possibility that there could be a speech problem, because there's just, they're not hearing the sound. There's,
Mhm.
all they hear is noise, or all they feel is pain, or they may need to get, what they call tubes, because they're not draining, it's not draining, so they need to get the tubes. So
Mhm.
if I, hear a history and they say, oh, they've had frequent ear infections, then I know, oh, okay, so that makes sense. If you catch it early enough, then there's not too much damage and we can get going. But there's definitely a correlation. There's also a correlation between, it's called auditory processing. So it means that, you're telling me, hi, Daphne, how are you? And all I hear, my brain hears is wah, 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 wah. Like I'm not processing it. So if you say,
Mhm.
oh, Daphne, what did I say? It would be completely different. So that is the not hearing, but just the way the auditory nerve is processing. There's an issue there. But
Wow.
with the little itty bitties, you have to be very careful if your child has a lot of ear infections, because that could play a role in a delay.
Got you, got you. So Miss Odin is saying a piece of advice to any parents who've had children who do need speech or language therapy, seek private provider service. I'm not sure if you're gonna be touching on that, Ms. Daphne. The service they provide at school is limited. The speech pathologists wear so many hats. The kids don't get quality time or service. They have good intentions, but due to budget cuts, kids are suffering in the process. Therapy is not done with fidelity. Any speech or language impaired parents need to advocate for their kids. So what she is really saying is perhaps not to rely totally on the school system for the child's speech therapy, but to get additional hours from
Mhm.
a private provider who can provide those services. Would you agree with that, Ms. Daphne?
It depends on where you are. It
Okay.
depends on where you are, because in my school, I have about 26 children on my caseload, and we have two therapists in my building. And, the kids get speech twice a week, 30 minutes in a group, individually, consistently. There's some places that the speech therapists, I don't know if they necessarily wear many hats. Like I said, that's a location specific thing. But there are places where the therapist has 60 kids on their caseload. That is just that I wouldn't necessarily make that generalization. I mean, maybe she's speaking from experience, but obviously a parent, you have to advocate for your child. If you feel like you want additional services, of course, go to the outside, go through your insurance or something like that. But I don't necessarily, I mean, you also have to have an open dialogue with your speech therapist. I have a communication book with all of my parents. Every time a session is over, the book goes home and they know what we did, or the parents will email me or I'll email them. So I guess I think that's experience specific.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for the clarification. It makes sense depending on where you're at.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, and also, just one thing, it's not quantity, it's quality. So even if I have a child that has services 5 days a week, just because they're getting services 5 days a week doesn't mean that is not great. Like, I don't need to see your child 5 days a week. And just because you think I want my child to get speech 5 days a week, okay, but that's not helpful. It's like the quality of the service, because if your child is getting speech 5 days a week, they're getting pulled out of class 5 times a week and they're missing something. But if I can have them twice and be intense, then that's better than 5 times a week where they're missing. So a
that,
lot of parents think more, more, more. It's not always more, more, more. It's quality. It's
right.
what I do have children that I see 3 times a week. I have children that I see 4 times a week, but the majority of them is twice a week.
Okay. That makes sense. Um, you mentioned that getting the parents involved. And it's not just when they go to therapy that they receive the actual treatment.
Mhm.
So, what do you send the child home with? Do you send them with visuals? Like,
Mhm.
let's say, do you send them with, can the parent go to the different sites and where the person is mimicking the language and the sound? Like, they sit in front of a TV for 20 minutes or 15 minutes and listening, like
Mhm.
when they're home, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
What type of materials do you give them to go home with?
So, like the school age children, if it's articulation, which is where I'm working on the speech sound, in the
Mhm.
beginning, I would have sent home, pictures, or, wrote a note and told the parent, okay, this is what you do, use a mirror and stuff like that. And then
Mhm.
they get their notebook or whatever it is sent home. And then I tell the parents, especially if we're talking about articulation, which is the speech sound part, not the language, it's drill.
Mhm.
You have to practice a little bit every day. So I'll
Mhm.
say, you're picking up, Johnny from school. Why don't you say 10 words in the car with Johnny and have him practice them? Oh, you're at the dinner table. Why don't you have Johnny say 5 words? So with
Mhm.
that, I tell them you have to do it, or else it's not going to be beneficial. As they get older, though, the children, like maybe third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, if they are not invested in wanting to get better, if
Mhm.
they're not motivated, then they're not going to practice. So you
Okay.
have more success with the children that are like up until like, probably I can probably get them to do it up until they're like 8 years old. And then
Okay.
they're like, why? I don't want to. And then until it starts to bother them, until their friends start to bother them, then they don't
Mhm.
care. Language wise, I could say, oh, we read a story today. This is this, I'll tell the parent, this is the story that we read. Have
Mhm.
John tell you what happened in the story and report back to me. Or I'll send home stuff that we did and just tell them to practice.
Okay. That makes sense. So, what are the incentives that you give to small children to make them want to practice?
Well,
What?
they're easy. The little kids are easy. They want stickers. I have a sticker chart. They want stickers. And usually when they're in kindergarten, when they're in first grade, even second grade still, they follow. So, if the parent is like, okay, we're going to do this, or, I have to tell, Miss Doran that you didn't practice, they want to do it. And then the little itty bitty babies, it's just, whatever you're doing at home. So if we're working on kitchen stuff, if we're working on stuff at dinner, you could practice that stuff,
Mhm. Okay.
with the vocabulary and stuff like that.
Okay. And of course, much prayer first, and then follow the directions of the therapist and work with the therapist.
Yes.
Consider the therapist the friend, but not the person, not the enemy, right? Even
Right.
though sometimes you're hard with the kids, um, well, if they can express it, they would say like, "Mom, I don't want to go back anymore," right?
Exactly.
But
Yep.
work with the
Exactly.
therapist, do whatever they're asking you to do, and that would help the child make progress
And
language wise.
yeah, and especially when it's early intervention, when it's up until 3 years old, and I'm going into the homes. I'm there for minimum a year. Usually I'm there 6 months to a year, going into the house twice a week. So I become part of the family, and then they're like, oh, I'm coming. And the kids get into the routine once I
Right.
come and everything like that. So, the parents will say, oh, she's coming. This is what we're going to do. Sometimes the parents in the session, sometimes they're not. So yeah,
Okay.
it's definitely a partnership. You are your child's advocate, but your therapist, your speech therapist, your occupational therapist, your physical therapist, we are like your allies to make the child better.
Okay, and one last question: how successful is speech and language therapy in making those child get better development at the speech and language? Is it something that you found to be very very successful, or you've had rates where the children, regardless of what you do, that just it doesn't happen?
Well, every child makes progress. That's what I'll say.
Okay.
Every successful in different areas. I've had children, not all of my children, when I'm done with them, not all of my clients are talking, but they can sit for a story, or they can
Mhm.
follow a direction, or they know how to play, because there's different things. And, what I always tell the parents when I come, I am not working on your child talking first. That's not the
Mhm.
first thing. I need to know, can they follow directions? Can they play with me? If I have a toy, can they do joint attention, which means that they look at the toy when I look at the toy? Do they have
Mhm.
eye contact? So there's so many precursors that they need first.
Got.
Speech works. Everybody benefits from speech. Whether you have a problem or not, everybody can get better. And I always say, it never hurts. If you're concerned, the most that could happen is the testing will come back that your child doesn't qualify. If you really feel that way, in 6 months, do it again, and maybe they will qualify. So I
Mhm.
feel like it's very successful. I never had a child that has not progressed in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, good. That's very good to know, and that's very encouraging. Well, Miss Daphne, we must put an end to this wonderful programme Thursday Night Live. C'était avec nous le jeudi soir en direct. Côté nous venir pour nous informer, éduquer et rappeler des informations que peut-être vous capable qui capable passer à l'idée que ou pas songer, ou du moins sont capable de gagner un ami, ou capable de gagner une famille qui capable besoin d'information ça, même si c'est pas ou même si c'est pas la caille ou même si c'est pas petit ou bien ti neveu ou ti nièce ou, but there might be someone now or maybe in the near future that might need that, and you're like, but wait a minute, I heard this, I learned this, you can try this, you can try that. So on croit que l'important, encore une fois, merci nous dire ou même qui t'a regardé nous sur Facebook ou bien même qui t'a regardé nous sur YouTube, si vous pas de chance abonner sur YouTube channel Sarah Batroni, fais ça. Et Nabdou, un grand, grand, grand merci encore, Miss Daphne. Merci pour service à la communauté. No one, thank you so very much. It's good to have professionals like you come on Thursday Night Live to give us all this information that we will someday, somehow, yes, put to practice. It will help someone at some point in time.
Thank
So
you so
thank
much
you.
for having me.
So, yes, thank you so very much. It's been great. It's been wonderful. Thank you. And again, you're welcome to come to this platform. Be not a stranger. Don't be a
I won't be a
stranger.
stranger, I promise. I
Don't
won't
be
be
a
a stranger.
stranger. Anyhow, anytime you have info, please make sure you give us a call, and then we'll be sure to put you on again.
No
Okay.
problem. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Miss Wellness saying thank you. Mr. Verney saying thank you.
Oh, thank
Say
you.
hello to the viewers. My daughter Vanessa's on. Um, Yes, Miss Oldine is there. Joanne, we hope that we answered your questions. Michelle, God bless you, Michelle. My sister, Pastor Lernia is there. God bless you. I think she's both on YouTube and Facebook. I'm not sure what she's doing, but I saw that the day before.
Yay. I'm
Okay.
so happy. Thank you so
Yes,
much. If anybody
yes,
has any other, like if you want to forward questions to me, you can email me and I'll try and, get back to you. Because everybody has like situations that are specific and they want like advice or whatever. So
yes,
feel free to email me any questions that you want and I'll do my best to answer.
yes.
But like I said, I guess the two most important things I would say is talk to your child like a child, like a person, enrich them in language, and know your child. So if you have a feeling, if you have a gut, go with it.
Yes. So they can email you at ddspeechy@yahoo.com. Is that right?
Yes.
ddspeechy@yahoo.com. That is the email address for Daphne. If you have a question that you want to her to answer for you, and you did not want to put it on the live. All right. So Miss Clemencia, merci parce que vous êtes ensemble avec nous. Thank you for being with us. Miss
Thank you so much.
Rosier, God bless you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
So,
Have a good night, everyone.
and people, please remember to share this live that it may be useful to others, to someone else. God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. God bless you, Daphne. Thank you so much
Bye.
again. Hey guys, tomorrow is the 16th of October. Tomorrow's Friday. I will be seeing you live in the morning for prayer. All right. God bless you. And of course, this month is dedicated to the call of God on our lives, okay, and how to respond, how to answer that call. All right. So may the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you. May he be gracious unto you. May the Lord turn his face towards you, and may he give you his peace, the peace that surpasses all understanding. Good night and be well. This was Thursday Night Live, le jeudi soir en direct. God bless you.